Hi, everyone. My name is Susanna Matthews. I'm an Associate Director of Admission here at Columbia Business School, and primarily responsible for working on the Deferred Enrollment Program. I'm joined here by two current MBA students, as well as my colleague Chantal Bissono. Um, so I will go ahead and have our current students introduce themselves. They're former Deferred Enrollment Program students, so they've lived the experience. And I don't have to tell you guys how to introduce yourselves. I know you do it many, many times since you've been here. So Peyton, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Peyton. I'm originally from New York, so didn't get very far here. I went to Northwestern undergrad where I had applied to the deferred enrollment program my senior year. I then worked at Goldman for 5 years, or 4 years, first in wealth management, and then I moved to a digital transformation role all around emerging technology, both internally to build tech and externally to help clients gain exposure to it in their portfolios. Came to Columbia. I spent my summer in consulting at BCG in New York, and that's where I'll be going once I graduate.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. And Stephanie.
Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie. So I'm originally from New Jersey, so also very close. I went to Columbia undergrad, and so I decided to come back to Columbia through the DEP program. In between my two Columbia experiences, I worked in consulting at Accenture first, and then I worked at Twitch, both in strategy. And then this summer, I wanted to stay in tech, so I interned at Roblox, but I just pivoted into product marketing. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you both for being here. As I mentioned before, my colleague Chantal is going to be monitoring the Q&A. So if as questions come up during the presentation, please feel free to put them there. We will do a verbal Q&A at the end. And so most of the frequently asked questions we will discuss towards the end, but any kind of one-offs, Chantal is available to answer. If you ever call our front desk or send us an email, it is often Chantal answering that. So an integral part of the admissions team she keeps us all moving. So without further ado, let's jump right in and let's talk about deferred enrollment. So to get started, I always like to provide some additional context as to what this is. Deferred enrollment, or as we call it, DEP, is an opportunity for students to apply to business school while you are in your final year of undergrad or in the final year of a master's program that you entered into right out of undergrad. And should you be admitted, you then defer your enrollment for a minimum of 2 and up to a maximum of 5 years. Go out, get some work experience, much like our panelists discussed. And then when you are ready, you decide to come to CBS and you already have your spot waiting for you. So it's a really great option for folks who know that they want to go to business school down the road, but feel that it's important to gain work experience before they come. I think around 99, if not 100% of our MBA class has at least 1 year of full-time work experience. So in order to be a strong contributor in the classroom, that's something that most people will do. So deferred enrollment allows you that flexibility to start your career knowing you have this admission in your back pocket. And during that time, you're welcome to engage with us as much or as little as you would like. We do virtual events. We at times have done in-person events, and a lot of students will come to events on campus as well, whether it be conferences or visiting speakers or things like that. And so it can be just a good option if you see business school on the horizon for you. So turning to our panelists, I would love to ask 2 questions, and Stephanie, I'll start with you. One being, why did you choose to apply to deferred enrollment? And then the other being, why did you decide to defer for the amount of time that you did?
Yeah, great question. I think deferred enrollment gives you that safety net for you to explore because you know that you can go back to school and pivot after. So I spent 4 years in the deferred period, so I didn't use up the entire 5 years. And that was because I was at a stage in my career where I knew if I stayed another year, I wasn't getting promoted, or I wasn't, going to be able to pivot. So I thought it was the right time to go back to school and really learn. Also, the job market was, not the greatest at the time that I chose to come back. So I think it was like the perfect time to just like go to school and not really worry about, well, I still have a job at my old company, Twitch. They were doing a lot of layoffs at that time as well. So yeah.
Understood. And I think it's a good point to note the idea that you mentioned, like the safety net and also that flexibility to do a couple different jobs during your deferral period. You're not locked into one particular thing. But Peyton, I know you were in not necessarily one role, but at one company for that full period. So walk us through why deferred for you and why you decided to take that full 5 years.
Um, yeah, when I was a senior in college, it was COVID, and that definitely played a part in the fact that I was home. My older sister was studying for the GMAT, so I figured why not? Not yet thinking about deferred, so I took the GMAT, and then at Northwestern they have like a program where you can apply to Kellogg actually without the GMAT. So, but I'm from New York. I wanted to be back in New York. My job lined up was in Chicago. And so I realized I looked into Columbia and saw if they had a different program, thinking like, what a great thing to have in your back pocket so I could take some career risks. And as like my way of, in case I can't seem to get my career to get me back to New York, like I will go to Columbia and get myself back to New York. And so I applied, which was great to have. And then started at Goldman in wealth management. I credit having the deferred like enrollment as hugely important to my career because I took a huge risk. I was looking into moving back to New York within Goldman. And there was an open job in at the time, digital asset team that was working on Bitcoin. I have zero background in that, had no interest in that, but thought it sounded really interesting to be on an entrepreneurial team at a huge firm. And with the risk it took, I figured, you know what, if this doesn't work out and they shut down this team and I get laid off, I'll go to Columbia and like kind of do a pivot. That's not what happened. It ended up working out great. The team actually expanded the mandate to work on generative AI and blockchain technology. So it was incredible to get that experience. And I would never have had that if I hadn't known I could go to Columbia at some point in that timeline. The team was really small. It was just two of us. And so I finally had gotten really great experience and decided if it was now or never. And I love school. I didn't have a finance background or a tech background. So I figured what a perfect time to go fill those gaps and go back to school. And that's definitely paid off.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like that was a really interesting experience. And I appreciate you flagging that there are many programs at many different schools that have the similar philosophy. You're admitted, you defer for a period of time, and then you come back into whatever school it is. So this is not unique to CBS. And so certainly encouraged to explore lots of different options in the same way that you would explore business schools in general. And so kind of switching gears a little bit to talk about like why an MBA. You've heard it mentioned that people, Peyton, you mentioned coming in, you did not have a finance background. I think it's important to flag that why people decide to go to school can be for a pivot. It can be for a situation in maybe they have reached a ceiling and they think that an additional degree will help them reach that next level of their career. And an MBA provides 2 years of dedicated time to be able to explore other opportunities and have the time to gain additional skills when you are while you are here in school. And I think certainly something I hear a lot from people is the time to network, develop leadership skills, and also just engage in conversation with different types of people from all sorts of different backgrounds. So knowing that, I guess, Peyton, I'll start with you. Why was the MBA, like MBA as a degree, as opposed to any other type of business degree, the direction you decide to take?
Um, at least for me, again, like graduated during COVID, started my career during COVID. And I think the MBA on top of obviously all like the academic stuff, but like really promotes like that networking, that community. And that was really important to me. I feel like I missed out on a lot of that because of the pandemic. And so coming here, getting to meet people. And I also think that's why Columbia stands out in the diverse community that's built here. So like people coming from different backgrounds, different countries, different like, you know, careers. And so that I think was one of my biggest I guess draws to an MBA was getting on top of, you know, being able to take classes and do all that to actually meet people and to, you know, build my network and learn more about what everyone does. It's the most interesting, at least I think, group of people. I didn't actually come in knowing anything about consulting, and through just simply talking to my peers, and many of whom come like Stephanie from consulting, that's how I ended up pivoting to it. So I think that was a huge draw for me.
Yeah, certainly, and definitely speaks to the idea of that idea of connecting with people and how important that is as a part of this degree. Stephanie, do you have anything to add about your own experience?
Yeah, so I kind of took a different approach when I decided on MBA versus other business degrees. I think other business degrees are, targeted in one area. It could be like a business degree for marketing or something, whereas MBA is a very comprehensive study. So, your first semester, you do a lot of core classes. So that ranges from like econ, stats, marketing, strategy. And so you get to see what you don't know. Like, that there's that saying of like, you don't know what you don't know. I think the MBA is really important in filling those gaps that you're not even aware you have. And when I was coming in, I knew I had like gaps in statistics, and that's really where I wanted to focus on. But then, when I came in, I was like, oh, I also should probably brush up on econ and, have those conversations with people that I normally wouldn't have. So I think the value of an MBA, like in terms of education, is that you do get that overall experience rather than a targeted study.
Mhm. Yes, that's a very good point, and I think certainly something to have you all on the webinar think about as you're exploring advanced degrees. Like, what sort of environment do you want to be in terms of the classes? We'll get to this in a moment, but a lot of CBS's curriculum is very flexible, and you might be someone who wants something a little bit more targeted. And Stephanie, I appreciate you bringing up the idea of you don't know what you don't know, because I talk to so many people who are worried that maybe they don't know things coming into school, and that's why you go to school. Like, you go to school to learn more things. So I think it's totally normal and totally understandable why that would be the case. So, okay. So you both kind of alluded this to a little bit, and we will talk more in detail about kind of the specific areas of CBS that might be your favorites. But so far, we've talked about New York, we've talked about the community, we've talked maybe about like just the opportunities that are available for folks at CBS. Are there any other things that either of you would like to add as to why you chose CBS over other schools? And it's entirely possible we covered it all, which is totally fine.
Um, so I can kind of, well, I think my experience is kind of unique because I only applied to CBS and no other school. And a large part was because it was in New York, but also I went to Columbia for undergrad, and during my time, I had the opportunity to work for the Behavioral Research Lab, which is part of Columbia Business School. And I was able to interact with a ton of professors that were doing research at Columbia. And I just thought that every single professor was, super hands-on. They were willing to teach. And I wanted that experience, even though I knew it was like a huge school. Like, we have probably 1,000 people per class, but at the same time, professors able to give that time to everyone. And so, I wanted to be part of a big school, but also have professors that cared. And that's kind of what drove me to apply to CBS.
I'm so glad to hear that you had that experience. We'll talk about professors in more detail in a bit. Sorry, Peyton, you unmuted?
Yeah, I was gonna say the only thing to add, like similar vein, New York was a huge component. I also only applied to CBS because I knew I wanted to be in New York. And then on top of that, why I like CBS in New York. and it's on this slide, even the campus is really important to me. I didn't go to Columbia, but a lot of members of my family have. Between Barnard and Columbia, I think every generation has had someone who's gone. And so I know how beautiful it is. We're not on like the main campus, but I do love that like while we're in New York City and part of like the amazing community that exists there, there is also like a really defined CBS community, and being here all day, seeing everyone in class and on campus like is important. And that mattered a lot to me.
And we'll definitely get into more detail about how the New York, the access that people get through being in New York, and just how the overall city really adds to the experience here at CBS. So switching gears to talk a little bit about like the structure of the MBA and what this looks like. So with deferred enrollment, it is basically just a different path to the same degree. So when you are ready to come to CBS, you will either enter in the August entry or January entry. So looking at this slide kind of gives you a little bit of a breakdown on what both 2 years will look like. August entry follows a traditional academic year schedule. You take 2 semesters of classes, a break for a summer internship, and 2 more classes, and then 2 more semesters. We will explain what all these words mean in a moment, core versus electives versus block weeks and all those things. But I do want to highlight the difference within January entry. So January entry, you start in, as it states, January, and you take classes throughout the summer. So it is 4 consecutive semesters of classes. You do not have a formal break for a summer internship. So this is a good option for people who are maybe sponsored by their company or working for a family business or entrepreneurs, or they don't feel the need to, they're not going to leverage an MBA for a complete and total career pivot. That could be a good option for you. Through deferred enrollment, you have the option in either to either matriculate in August or January. Most people tend to matriculate in August. Based on the fact that both Peyton and Stephanie did internships this summer. I know they were both August entry matriculants, but it's up to you. And that's something you do not have to decide until you are ready to come to CBS. That's not something you decide when you're applying. But we'll talk a little bit more about the breakdown of what the core or required curriculum consists of, and then also what our electives look like. But you can see there's a lot of flexibility within the curriculum. A lot of it is your own choices and your own desired direction. So one of the benefits of being in New York is a lot of the times is the access to different types of professors that we have, especially when it comes to maybe professors who are adjunct, who are working in a particular industry during the day and then coming up to campus at night to teach classes. But a couple of these professors on the slide are full-time tenured professors who teach a wide variety of different types of classes here at CBS. Stephanie, I'm going to call on you, knowing that you've worked with different professors in your undergrad experience. I'd love to hear about like here now at CBS. Do you have a favorite professor or a favorite class?
Yes. And I'm a little biased because I am TAing for his class, but my favorite professor is Matan Greifel. So he teaches Intro to Databases, which is the SQL class. It's like an Intro to SQL class. And then he also teaches Intro to Python. And I really like him because he actually doesn't come from a CS background. He's self-taught. He comes from a business background. So the way he explains coding concepts is very digestible. I studied engineering in undergrad, so I had a lot of CS professors that were pure CS, and they kind of would, lecture at the board and not really explain like, oh, how does this apply to business? Whereas Matan, because he comes from that business background, he will, give examples of how you can leverage specific code for specific business cases. And I think he also successfully exited multiple startups. So he has a very impressive resume. So that's one of my top professors. If anyone's interested in tech, or even if you're interested in like business analytics, I highly recommend Matan if you do choose to come to CBS.
I've heard a lot of positive things about learning coding language while you're here and how relevant and important it can be. Peyton, do you have anything to add about favorite class or professors?
Yeah, I actually took that class and it was amazing, and Stephanie was my TA. So would second that. Second, it was similar. I also had like an interest in like the tech stuff. And so I took an AI and virtual reality class taught by Sharad Devarajan, who's incredible. Like also similar, like has this really impressive background of like startups. He brought like Marvel comics to India. He only teaches like one class a semester during a block week, which is like the week before classes start. You can take either a full or half semester class in like a very condensed week window. But he just brings in the most amazing speakers. And so you get to hear all this like real world experience and get like this like awesome update on what is going on in the world of AI and virtual reality.
That sounds very cool. And as someone who is maybe a little skeptical of AI in terms of I don't fully understand it, I can imagine a class like that would be very helpful in maybe easing some concerns when asked about AI. So we're going to break down the core curriculum a little bit further. So this is the curriculum that you take during your first term at CBS. It's a set of required classes that you will take. And you are placed into, you take your required core curriculum with the same 70 or so students. And that is known as your cluster. The Office of Student Affairs does a lot of very intentional work to put together these clusters. And so it's a mix of people from all sorts of different professional backgrounds, personal backgrounds. And the idea is that it's creating a diverse experience in the classroom, and people are able to speak to different problems or different subjects in very different ways. And breaking that down further, you also are placed into a learning team, and that's who you do a lot of your studying with. And that is, again, people of different professional and personal backgrounds, because you're all coming to school with different strengths. You know, you're going to have the people who maybe spent their career getting up in front of clients and having presentations or making pitches, and then you're maybe going to have people who are far more data focused, and you're all going to be in one space and really be able to rely on each other and learn from one another. I know that there's a lot of love between clusters and learning teams. And Stephanie, I know you have to leave us shortly, so I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your experience in your cluster.
Yeah, love my cluster H. So like you said, it has a ton of people from diverse backgrounds that I never thought I'd interact with. One of my good friends, she's a nurse. Another one of my close friends, he lived a whole life before he came here. He was like an animator, and then he was a startup founder and successfully exited from like 5 different startups. And now, you know, he's kind of just figuring life out. So it's very cool to talk to these people that, you know, for me, I was very used to just talking to, you know, corporate folks, you know, people that had very similar backgrounds for me, but meeting people that have very different backgrounds that don't necessarily like have business backgrounds, you get to see how they think, and how they think is definitely different from the way, you know, you're trained in a like consulting firm or something, but it's really cool to get that different perspective. Even on my learning team, I had one of my close learning teammates, he worked in wine. So also very different, and the way he approached problems was very methodical, and like he came from a sales background, so the way he talked, I was like, oh wow, these are points that I can kind of take with me in my interview process and later on. So you do learn a lot of things, not just, you know, the overall like perspectives, but also like how they talk about certain things. So I really enjoyed my cluster experience. And now that we're in second year, you interact with your cluster less, but there's still opportunity to, you know, interact with people of different backgrounds as well. Yeah.
Peyton, do you have anything to add in terms of your experience?
No, I think that covered it really well. I just, yeah, going through core with them, like everyone was so incredibly helpful in areas I didn't excel at. Anyone would be happy to help. And I think, like Stephanie said, that extends to everything. Like with consulting recruiting, I had never done that before. And people in my cluster who were sponsored or done consulting were happy to take all the time in the world to case me, to give me advice. It's just incredibly supportive.
That's something that I consistently hear about the CBS community, that level of support. And I think there's also like a real pay it forward mentality. of people who've had experiences, really wanting to share that with other folks, or in the case of second years, wanting to pay that forward to first years, remembering that they were in those shoes not too long ago. Okay. So as we talked about a little bit earlier, a lot of your time spent at CBS is taking electives. Your core required curriculum is 1 term, and then you take 1 more class in your second term, but the rest of everything is your choice. And so what we have here is kind of an optional resource for folks called Curriculum Pathways. And I think of these as basically roadmaps within that apply to different industries. And so a pathway will outline different courses that are offered under a particular topics in question listed here on the slide. And this will give you insight into different types of maybe directions that you might want to take your career, knowing that there might be a more advanced class, what sort of prerequisites do you need? Knowing that you want to, for example, like if you want to head in the direction of like finance within the world of climate work, like you have a climate finance class, and there can be providing more information about different types of classes that would be available within that might align with your interest. This is not something that you have to declare or apply to or anything like that. It's optional, and you can take multiple classes from multiple pathways. It's not something that you are like locked into, but it can be a good resource. And like I said, roadmapped for things that you are you might be interested in. Okay. All right, knowing that you guys are fresh off, well, I guess it's November, so maybe not so fresh off, but you completed summer internships this past summer. And Peyton, I know you mentioned that your fellow classmates were a huge help in that, in sort of that preparation. I'd love to hear about your experience with the Career Management Center as well. I will go into more detail about the resources here, but as someone who literally quite just lived this, would love to hear from you to start.
Sure. Yeah, as stated, I had no background in consulting, so coming in, it was a bit of a whirlwind, and very overwhelming at first. It starts pretty fast, and there's a lot of work to be done to get to the internship. It's structured recruiting, which is consulting and investment banking. So that means there's just like a set timeline and very like concrete steps, whereas a lot of other recruiting sort of happens throughout the year as you do your own networking and reaching out, and firms come on campus. So the Career Management Center was incredibly helpful. They lay everything out really clearly. They send emails every week. They, along with the CMC fellows, which are second year peers who work with the Career Management Center, looked at my resume probably 10 times, helped me refine my pitch. I did like one of these pitch labs where your peers and a CMC advisor, my personal shout out to Joni, will sit with you and have you give your pitch, and then they all give you feedback, which is, again, I thought my resume and my pitch were both in great shape and got a lot of feedback on both at all of those sessions. So it's really helpful to hear from both your peers and the CMC to get to that like really good resume, really clean pitch. And then the Management Consulting Association. So there's clubs associated with a lot of the industries and careers people want to move into, and those are also incredibly helpful. So the MCA, Management Consulting Association, hosts probably 2 sessions a week around casing, education, firm Ask Me Anything, basically everything to get you through the process. And so without both the Career Management Center and the Consulting Club, I definitely would not have landed the internship I did. So I credit a lot of that to both of those groups.
I've also heard that oftentimes people go to Career Management Center meetings thinking that they're like, I'm in great shape, and then get helpful, but a significant amount of feedback.
Incredibly helpful, but it's always a little where I'm like, my resume is pretty great. And then you come back and like, oh, okay, like lots of work to be done, which is good. It makes it like now I think my resume is beautiful.
There you go. Stephanie, can you walk us through a little bit about your experience as well?
Yeah, definitely. And then I will have to drop, but happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn if you want to ask more questions. It's just my name. So yes, I also leverage CMC fellows a lot. I think it's less intimidating to talk to a peer than to talk to, a figure of authority, especially like when you know your resume is not in the best shape. The second year peer CMC fellows can be that first line of defense, and they really, really helped me. I worked with one CMC fellow pretty extensively, and I was able to get a ton of interviews just through her feedback on my resume. And for context, I did recruit for tech, so it's a little less structured than consulting or banking. A lot of it is like you submit your resume and you kind of just pray that it's going to get picked up by a recruiter, because there's like no networking involved. Referrals don't really matter for internships. And so I knew like a big part of why I was able to get a role this summer was because of the CMC fellows. And actually, this year I am a CMC fellow, so I'm on the other side helping first years with their resume. Wanted to pay it forward. The other cool aspect of CMC is the coaching program. So there's a bunch of coaches that have gone to CBS, and are, a couple years out of CBS, and they have a variety of different like industry experience. So I worked with Elliot, and he started his own startup, but I think he also worked at like Google or Meta. So I asked him to case me, since I knew he probably had experience interviewing other people. So he gave me a lot of constructive feedback. One big feedback that he told me that like is still with me to this day is he was like, you have a lot of knowledge, you just don't come across as confident. And a lot of times that's just like pausing and really, enunciating everything instead of speeding through talking. And so it stuck with me. And now I really try to focus on the pacing in all my interviews. But yeah, he was a great coach. But lots of different resources within CMC.
Awesome. That's really great that you were able to take advantage of the alumni coaching program. And to your point, now paying it forward for, first years as well. Thank you so much for joining us. I will also, for those of you on the session, at the end, I will also put a link to our Contact a Student page, which has contact information as well. But thanks so much for joining us, Stephanie. So this gives you a little bit of a snapshot into our overall career outcomes. There is a formal employment report on our website for the past couple of years, and I do believe that this most recent year's employment report will be coming out shortly. But this just kind of gives you some insight into the many different industries that CBS students will go into, as well as just a small snapshot of some of the companies that people will end up working for when they graduate. So you heard a little bit about some professional organizations already, in terms of assistance with the internship and job search. However, you all are well-rounded individuals. There are so many other things that you are interested in doing, and so we have over 75 student organizations that can help you with that. So this is just a small sampling of those different types of organizations. But I will tell you, I've never met a group of people more involved than business school students. And so Peyton, can you attest to that being true? Talk to us about what you were involved in.
Yes, way too involved. I think we all have a habit of taking on maybe a little too much, but it's because there's just such incredible communities available. So I know, at least for me, I'm actually this year the co-president of the Management Consulting Association. So also paying it forward to try to give back what I got out of the club last year. So I have that part of Hermes, which is why I'm here. But I have like an interest in tech specifically. So I'm part of the AI club. I was an AVP, which is like the first year leadership role for the AI club last year, helping plan their hackathon. Was part of the tech club. I'm part of the Columbia Women in Business Quib, Jewish Business Student Association, JBSA. Then like also snow sports, which does incredible ski trips, which is like, I love skiing. Art Society, they plan these really amazing events where you get to go to like I went to the opera last year. I've never done that before. I was a little worried I was gonna be there for like 8 hours, but it was not that. It was actually beautiful. And I went with like a few Columbia people and it was so much fun. Health and wellness club, because keeping track of your health and wellness definitely falls to the wayside here. So always good to remember that. Goodness, yes, there's so much to be involved in. The club fair is incredibly overwhelming when you go. So we always try to like warn first years to like try not to join every single thing out there, but it's really hard when, as said, there's, affinity clubs, social athletic, the community ones, the professional. So yes, everyone's very involved.
That's awesome. It really sounds like you've covered a wide variety of things that have added to your experience, which is really great. And I definitely had a perception when I started working here that business school was solely about like the academic and professional, but as you can see, there's fun to be had too. And I'm sure you're excited for winter to be here so you can go off skiing again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Those plans are already being coordinated.
Awesome. Okay. So after you graduate and you are a member of our CBS alumni network, that idea of paying it forward doesn't stop. That still certainly exists and is highly present in the lives of a lot of our CBS grads. I have had the privilege to travel on behalf of Columbia Business School and I've had the joy of working with alumni in different countries. And it is really incredible to see how people have developed friendships across class years through alumni clubs, or people who will say like, oh, I've been talking to prospective students. They reached out over LinkedIn to try to touch base and hear about my experience. And I think one of the really wonderful things that I've consistently heard is that people are willing to do that. There is that mindset of like, I want to tell you about this community and I'm happy to do that. And I also think that there are many different ways that people can leverage the alumni network while they're here on campus, whether it be more recent alumni in terms of connections that you've made while you were here, or also a lot of times our visiting speakers or participants in conferences or attendees at conferences and events are alumni as well. So there are plenty of different ways to make connections in that regard. Peyton, do you have anything to add in this topic, or do you think I covered it mostly?
No, I think covered well. I guess one add, like whatever you might be looking to do career-wise, post your MBA here, I have found at least that like the alumni network is incredible. You can reach out to almost anyone. They'll respond, they'll offer to help, especially within consulting. All the Columbia grads who are there, which is many of them, come back to events, talk about their favorite classes. I've gotten some of my class recommendations from those at BCG who were here 5 years ago, and some of those classes are still just as great. So just a really great network to be a part of where everyone is always willing to give the time to talk about their experiences and provide any advice you need.
That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that you've had that experience. Okay. Peyton, I'm going to give you a break because we're going to talk about admissions things. Okay. So as of like roughly 10 a.m. this morning, our application is open, which is very exciting. So we are going to walk through a little bit about the admissions requirements and what this all will look like. So first, who is eligible to apply? People who are graduating during the current academic year from a bachelor's program. And we consider the current academic year to be if you graduate between September 1st, 2025 and August 31st, 2026. So that's what we consider current academic year. Or full-time graduate students who entered into a master's program directly after earning a bachelor's degree. So graduated and then your next step was immediately going into graduate school. You are eligible to apply within this, if you are graduating within this academic year. So again, September 1st through August 31st. I want to start off by saying that this is an entirely different application from the MBA application. A lot of times people have the misconception that we compare these applicants. We do not. It's an entirely different application. We ask different questions, and you are at very different points in your lives. A college senior is at a different point than someone who has 3, 4, 5 years of post-grad work experience. So we are asking you for entirely different things. So we'll have an online application form that'll help you'll provide your biographic data. You'll talk a little bit about any sort of internships or experiences outside the classroom you may have had. You'll talk a little bit about any sort of activities that you've been involved with that you are personally really engaged with. You'll have the opportunity to share about your academic experience. This just kind of gives us a baseline understanding of what you are, what you're about. We'll also ask for an unofficial academic transcript. We do not have certain classes that are required. We do not have a minimum GPA or a GPA threshold or anything like that. And we have people of all different academic backgrounds who apply and are successfully admitted. So you do not have to have studied one particular thing in order to be competitive in the application process or to be admitted. We will ask for standardized test scores. They can be unofficial, meaning you don't have to submit the formal official scores when you apply. We accept the GMAT, the GRE, or the executive assessment. You only have to submit one of those tests. It is required. There is not a test, a waiver. And I assure you, regardless of the test that you take, we do not have a preference. Please take whichever test you feel is sets you up for success the most. And I really encourage you to kind of think about what's best for you individually, not what you read on the internet, what is best for you individually. We'll ask for a one-page resume. We understand that your resume might have like jobs you had in undergrad, maybe it's internships, maybe it's research experience. Everyone's resume looks a little bit different. We do not have a preferred format. Legible is my preferred format. And we also understand that there is going to be information that's going to be in multiple parts of your application. For example, on the online application form, we ask you for information about like, any sort of professional like experience you've had. That's also going to be on your resume. We totally understand. And it's an opportunity for you to include maybe different information about those items. We'll ask for one letter of recommendation. I know some other schools ask for two. We only ask for one. It can be an internship supervisor, a professor, someone who's known you in the context of your undergrad experience. We do not have a preference. And then we have 2 short answer questions, which are listed below. Our short answer questions are in fact quite short, so we would like you to abide by that word count. The first question is about, the way I look at it is like, what's the point of this whole exercise? Why are you doing this? Why are you applying? And we want to get a sense of why you feel you need an MBA to achieve your long-term career goals and why you want to be doing this at CVS. Now, we do not expect you to have your life mapped up for the next like 10 to 15 years. But when you think about why you feel like an MBA is a good idea for you, why? What might that reasoning be? We're not gonna, come find you when you decide to come to CVS and say, are you actually planning on doing this thing that you wrote about a few years ago? That's not what it is. It's the idea of like, have you put thought into why you're doing this? Someone could have and be incredible on paper, but if they can't tell me why they want an MBA, that does not a compelling applicant make. And then the second question here is that you've had plenty of time and chances to show us who you are in terms of data points. We want to learn a little bit more about you. So what is a community that you are excited about? Something that you belong to, something that you've been a part of. It can be anything in the way that you define community. We want to hear about your experience with that. So the deadline to submit your application is April 15th, 2026. Now that it's open, you are welcome to create an application and start working on it. You can submit it anytime up until noon on April 15th. However, there is no benefit to submitting it earlier versus later. We begin to review applications after the deadline. So if you want to check something off your to-do list, amazing. Go ahead and submit that early, but there's no benefit to it. So just want you to keep that in mind. We give ourselves about a month to start reviewing applications, and we will then also start issuing interview invitations. Interviews are a required part of the process. They are by invitation only, and they typically are given by a current student or a member of the admissions team. By May 15th, you will have heard whether or not you've been invited to interview. And in the event that you are not, you are more than welcome to apply to CBS again when into the MBA program or any number of our other programs. I have seen people who maybe applied to deferred enrollment, weren't admitted, they go off, gain an additional reasons or understanding about why they want an MBA, and then are successfully here as MBA students. So it certainly is possible, and we do not, look down on people who are reapplying by any stretch of the imagination. So this provides some like logistics of things. So if you are admitted, you will pay a $500 tuition deposit due August 1st, 2026, if you decide to participate in the program. And then you go off and live your life. And during your deferral period, we will check in with you at least once a year, and you will pay your yearly deferral continuation fee, which holds your spot in the class. That fee is $500, and all fees paid go towards your eventual tuition in the program. You also will provide us with a brief employment update. And when I say brief, I mean it can be a couple sentences, but it gives us a touch point with you at least once a year. You can give us an idea of what you're doing, where you are in the world, and what's been going on with you. If you apply this year and are admitted to the program, you are able to matriculate anywhere from 2028 all the way up from 2031. As I mentioned towards the beginning of the webinar, there are August entry and January entry options available. And information on institutional funding, which includes merit and need, will be provided the year that you matriculate. A lot can happen in 2 to 5 years, so that will be information will be given to you the year that you decide to come. And my colleague and I sent a series of emails providing information on how that works. Okay. This gives you a little bit more of a snapshot in terms of how folks fund their education. As deferred enrollment program students, you are considered a part of our round 1 applicant pool. So when you decide to matriculate, you are automatically considered for merit-based aid, and then you are able to apply for need-based aid as well. So this gives you, you receive priority consideration as a deferred enrollment program student. Okay. And we turn to the Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. This is our contact information. I will also put it in the chat box so you guys have access to that. And I see that we have a couple questions in the Q&A. So Chantal, walk us through what people are wondering about.
So a lot of folks were really asking for clarity about their eligibility. And I have been responding to some of those. I definitely recommend, there's something wrong with my camera. Okay, that's fine. Well, I definitely recommend taking a look at the answers that I have already provided. I noticed that there's like a little bit of repetition in the questions, but I think because we have Peyton here, we should really focus on the experience. And something earlier that you mentioned, Peyton, was that you are a part of different clubs. And a lot of folks really do wonder, how do you balance your coursework and all those extracurricular activities?
A great question. I also am wondering the answer.
It's not always easy, the short answer. I'm sure many of you, whether you're in like an undergrad or master's program, are in similar boats. But here, when you're at business school, you obviously have the academics, the classes, the networking and social aspect as you try to meet the amount of people who are here, and then the extracurriculars, as well as recruiting and career stuff as it comes up. So it can be a big balancing act. It's why I like that a lot of Columbia programming and other things are around making sure that like you're keeping track of yourself as well and your mental health. But I do think, you kind of get what you give into the program. So, especially being in New York, you can not join any clubs, not really interact with your, network, show up to classes, or you can really immerse yourself into the MBA program, which I think is the best thing you can do, and how you get the most out of this. So, a lot of people I know from first year to second year definitely don't join as many clubs. But you don't have to go to every event and every club thing, but you go to the ones you can. So classes aren't usually all day necessarily, but there's usually a lunch event you want to go to across the different clubs, trips that you want to go on. Then there's time obviously for homework and you can do that with like friends like on campus. And it's why I really emphasized having a campus and having this community. I didn't think I'd be on campus as much as I am because, there are days where I only have class in the morning, like today. But instead, I have class in the morning. I'm helping a first year with a case, and then I have another event, so I'll be on campus all day today. But that's like great. You're not working a full-time job anymore. It's not unrealistic to spend your entire day on campus. And it gives you a lot of time to give back and to be a part of those clubs and still get your homework done. Make friends, go to social events, have some fun as well, and go to your classes. So it is doable. We joke that it's a little bit of a way of bonding with those around you, both in your core classes and then onward to the entire community. That I feel that a lot of times when I see my friends, we're running across campus. So like two buildings, each headed to different things. I have a few people who asked if I were around at lunch, but I'm not. And so it's just, it's kind of what the culture is here. And it's great because again, it's only 2 years. And so when you get this much out of it, it's so special to then go off, go back to working full time. And you had those opportunities to go to really interesting lunch events with different speakers, go on those trips like ski. And the wine club does like wine tastings internationally, which is incredible. Um, and go to classes. I'm a huge nerd, so I happen to love the academics here. People like switch off on what they balance at different times, but I love going to class and learning from these professors who either were out in the world doing what they're teaching or are doing research on it and have so much to share. And then obviously you want to also keep in mind your career aspirations and keep that going as you're here as well, so that you leave hopefully with something lined up.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I know that a lot of folks are thinking about applying or they're preparing their application since we just launched, but do you have any tips to share, if you recall, about navigating the application process?
Yeah. I mean, I would say one, be authentic. I know that's like kind of cliche, but when it asks you about what you do on campus, like currently, like I was involved in my sorority. I was VP social standards, was like the cop. But I talked about how it really had given me an opportunity. It was much quieter when I was younger. And that was one of my first chances to experience a leadership position. I hadn't even applied to it. I had no one had applied because no one wanted to do that role. And I kind of got pulled into it, which is obviously be a more active participant in your life. But I loved it. And that made me more interested in being a leader moving forward. And there's a huge reason why I then, in my career asked for leadership opportunities. And now as an MBA have taken on huge leadership opportunities. And so I think, just talking about what you genuinely enjoy, what you're genuinely learning on campus, showing that you are an active member of a community, even with like the referral letter, like whether it's a professor or maybe someone from your internship, like someone that you really look up to and worked well with, you know, I would just it's almost like a good chance to reflect as you leave college and go off into the world of like what you contributed to the community. And especially when you think about how an MBA fits, thinking about those short and long-term career goals, those can of course change always, but it's always nice to have a little bit of a sense as you leave school and join the working world of where you want to go from there. And again, that can shift, but it does, like, I at least think it really helped me that I had some goals in mind when I walked out and started my career with an MBA as part of that.
That's great. And Natalie actually has a follow-up to that. She would like to know if there's anything you wish you had done during your deferral period or something that you found especially helpful that other deferred students didn't do.
Um, Something I wish I had done is I had done I looked into Columbia, looked in doing what you guys are doing now, joined webinars, learned a lot. And then I let those 4.5 years go by and kind of showed up here, really excited to join. And I do think the one thing I wish I had done that many of my peers who had applied, in the normal process, they had just recently done all that research into clubs, into the pathways, into different programs that you can be a part of. And I wish I had refreshed on those a little. There's opportunities to join deferred enrollment events. It got a little hectic with work. So I wish I had done a little bit of that before coming to campus. It all worked out, but every once in a while hear about some program and I'm like, oh, I've never heard about that. And someone's like, oh yeah, I wrote about it in my essay when I was applying right before school. But for me, that had been 4 years earlier and it had a little bit gone out the door. So I do think it's really helpful as you go through that period after, once you get in, to keep engaged, to continue talking to people, and then just kind of do like almost like a refresh right before you come to school, just to see like what were those things that stood out to me about Columbia, what did I want to be involved in, and even if maybe your career aspirations have changed, it's still helpful to like almost do that little refresh, and see what maybe Columbia even is offering new pathways and new courses, because once you get to campus, things move really, really fast, and it's easy to, again, it's 2 years, and as many of you I'm sure know from undergrad, like that flies by, and so it's easy to get to where I am now, looking at the last quarter of it, which is very sad, and realize, oh my God, there was like a few little things, like I got a lot out of this, but like there's always those things you're like, oh, I wish I had joined that program or done that little thing, and so I think that's really helpful. Also because I was in Chicago, I think I like really, for at least 2.5 years of that, of my deferred timing, I really was removed. Not that like you need to be in New York to be a part of the community. There's like group chats and virtual events. But I would say I think I just kind of like removed it from my head. I was like, okay, back pocket, like gone. And I like do recommend that you join more of those events. I think it's really great to be a part of that community and to start as early as you can.
And I can jump in here to talk a little bit about what type of events we do. So sometimes we will have events on campus, which are like networking socials for people across different deferred kind of years to get to know each other, or we'll invite current students who matriculated through the deferred enrollment program who are able to provide advice and guidance. We at times will do virtual events with our career office, just talking about the different career directions that people can take. And actually we have in recent years, when the admission office travels around the country or around the world and we have admitted student events, we invite deferred enrollment program students to those as well, because you are considered an admitted student until you matriculate. So it looks like a couple different things, but we really do our best to try to incorporate you all into things. And also a lot of times I will speak to students who will say like, oh, I saw that CBS was having this event and I signed up and like I attended this conference or I attended this speaker. And so people will find their way into that as well. As there are also, we will make you all aware of different conferences and things that are open to admitted students.
Thank you for sharing. And I think a great way to end it off, I know that we only have 2 minutes, is I'd love for Peyton to talk about what are some words that you would use to describe CBS students? If we could limit that to like 3 key words about the culture of the students.
Oh, that's really hard. One, I would say driven. As you can see from my explanation of all our involvement, driven. I guess like the word welcoming. I can talk to literally anyone in the hallways and anyone at events. And I think that's really special to have a community where you can walk up to literally anyone and just chat with them and meet them and hear about their life. Kind of in the realm of driven, but just impressive. Like I am constantly impressed by those around me, by their experience, by what they're doing, where they're going. We do like CBS Matters, which is a chance to kind of talk about your life and what matters to you. And I find I am always sitting there with my like jaw on the floor as I hear about my peers' life experiences, and careers. And I mean, they're just incredible. So I would put that out there, just impressive.
All great words. And so that brings us to the end of our webinar here. I want to thank you, Peyton, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to join us and to talk about your experience. I put a couple resources in the chat box for everyone. We have a contact a student page, so you can touch base with current students that volunteer with our office, and have access to contact information. As well as our email address and phone number. If you have further questions that didn't get answered, please don't hesitate to reach out. Someone asked if this recording will be available, and it will be. It will be available on our website on our recorded events page in the coming weeks. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, evening, afternoon, whatever it might be. Wherever you are. All right. Thanks, everyone.